Hi, I'm Vinnie Moore, and welcome to my Hot Licks video. Before we get started today, let's tune up. Okay, I'm in tune with a meter right to A440, so if you have a meter at home, you might want to tune to that. If not, I'll give you the notes right here. Here's a high E. B. G. D. Okay, let's move on here. The first thing I want to get... Okay, if you notice, this is kind of real mysterious and Egyptian-like sound. You know, it's kind of a popular thing to do nowadays. You can experiment with it and get a certain tonality that's really cool that I like to use a lot. I'll try to give you an example here. All right, now I want to talk about how you can apply this scale, where you can use it. You may try this with some of your chord structures over some of your solos and your songs, and you may find that it really doesn't, sound right, it doesn't fit in. So you may be wondering, how do I use this scale? It sounds weird. So now I'd like to cover like 2 ways that you can incorporate this scale within your playing style. Okay, the first way would be in the key of A minor, to play the sharp 7th over an E major scale. Over an E major chord, excuse me. Okay, now let's look at a chord scale in the key of A minor, and you'll find that the chords in that key are C major, D minor, E minor, F major, G major, A minor, B minor with a flat 5, and C the octave. Okay, now if you noticed, I said that E minor was in the key of A minor, which is correct. Now what a lot of guys are doing nowadays, including myself, is substituting E major for E minor. Okay, we're in the key of A minor, so when we substitute the major chord here for the minor chord in E, we're actually making G sharp. If you look at an E minor, the open G is there, and when you add the major, the first finger here, it's G sharp. So since we're in the key of A minor, we have the G sharp, so we can use the harmonic minor scale over that E major chord. And I'll give you like a basic example here, a chord structure that maybe you can put down on tape and experiment with this harmonic minor scale just to get a feel for the tonality it has. You can take really anything in the key of A minor that's built around an E major chord, maybe like this. Okay, and you could just play something basic like that, based on E major, and, put it on tape, the rhythm track, playing it over and over as many times as you feel like, and then sit down and practice the harmonic minor scale over this chord structure, and you'll really get a feel for the tonality of this scale. You'll find that it's real mysterious, and it has an Egyptian feel. Personally, I really like this, and I like to incorporate it into my playing a lot because, I favor this sound. So experiment with that. Okay, the second way that we could use the harmonic minor thing here with a sharp 7 is to use the G sharp as a passing tone in the bass of a chord. Let me give you an example. Okay, say we're in the key of A minor. Let's take a walk up, from maybe F to G sharp to A, like this. Okay, now if you noticed, I played this chord. Now what this chord actually is here is an E major again. If you look at this form right here, it's a basic E major chord, and I'm adding the G sharp here with my first finger in the bass, which is the sharp seventh. This is a passing tone. It sounds a little dirty because my amp said dirty, but you have to play this kind of clean for it to sound good, but this is basically the chord. Okay, the G sharp here is a passing tone. You couldn't land on this because it would sound real unresolved. It's just a chord that leads to another chord, like, this might lead to A. And, the pattern would resolve on A. It'll never resolve on the G sharp. It's a passing tone. But anyway, this is your second way to use a harmonic minor scale. Okay, we talked about this walk up here. We're in the key of A minor. Over the F major chord, you're playing in A minor. Over the G major chord, you're playing in A minor. Now when you get to the passing chord here with a G sharp, you can play the harmonic minor scale just over that chord because it has the sharp seventh tone in there. And then when you get to the A minor, you're back in A pure minor again. And this is a really interesting thing to do. I like to do it a lot. You're basically changing, from A minor to A harmonic minor for just one instant, one chord. And it can really make things interesting. I really like to use this in my ideas. And you should also experiment with this because, you'll be less limited here, and it's just a good idea to use a certain tonality just for one chord and then, move on to a different tonality. I think you'll find it pretty interesting. Okay, so now I want to get into some scale exercises here with a basic C major scale, that we covered, in the beginning of the video. And this exercise is called a seconds exercise. I'll play this slow first, so you can see what I'm doing, and then I'll play it a little faster. Okay, here we go. Okay, that's a seconds exercise. Now let's move on to what is called a thirds exercise here, based on the same scale, slightly different pattern. I'll play it slow for you at first. All right, now I have one more exercise that's, based on this same scale. And, I don't really know what the name of it is here, so we'll call it the X exercise here for lack of a better thing to call it. And it goes like this. All right, there you have 3 exercises. Now, this may help your picking. Again, concentrate with these. Make sure you're playing down, up strokes always, consistently, back and forth. Get that motion in your hand going back and forth and try to keep your arm relaxed. Okay, learn these scales. exercises. You can use it as a picking exercise, but also, once you learn it, don't forget about it. Learn it and then use it in your playing. These are for getting ideas for your leads to incorporate this in your lead playing. You might want to take patterns from these exercises and incorporate that into your style, just little phrases here and there. So don't forget these when you learn them and then apply them in your solos. You can pick all kinds of ideas out from these. I'm sure you heard ideas like just based on one of those exercises. There's all kinds of things in there that you can find and use as a vehicle to create new licks, new picking patterns. So really experiment with this stuff, and try to squeeze everything you can out of it. Okay, so now I want to move on to a different section here, and I'd like to call this pivoting notes. Now, what I mean by this is a phrase of notes, a line that consistently comes back to one note within that phrase. So you're playing a group of notes, but you're always coming back to that one note every other note. The best way really is for me to give you an example. In fact, I have 6 examples here, 6 licks that you can use and try to incorporate in your playing. So they're all going to be in the key of A minor, and I'm going to start here on the 12th fret with an A minor lick. I'll play it fast first so you can see what it's all about, and then I'll slow it down so you can pick it up. Okay, now I'll play that slower so you can see exactly what I'm doing. Okay, I'm banking everything off of this E note here. I'm playing this first, and then I'm building a line underneath it. So I'll slow it down here. All right, this is what I'm calling here, pivoting off of notes. Here, in this case, we're pivoting off of an E note. Now, I'm real big on, trying to squeeze everything I can out of an idea. So, okay, take this example, and experiment with it. Move it around and play it in different positions and try to, just get, the most you can out of this lick. I'm going to give you an example here by moving it to every position here in the key of A minor. And you can experiment with this also. It's based on the same idea here, and I'm just moving it to different positions. Okay, so when I give you an example and it's in one position on one group of strings, learn it that way, but then try to use it in every way you can think of, every position within the key, and also, move it around on different groups of strings, anywhere. You can take the same idea and do it here. So, learn that and try to get, the most you can out of it. So now I'm going to move on here to lick number 2, which is, again, in the key of A minor, and I'm going to my pivot note is going to be this G right here on the B string, and the line is going to go like this. I'll play it fast, and then I'll slow it down for you so you can see what I'm doing. Okay, here it is slow. Okay, that's another idea of pivoting. That's pretty cool. You should experiment with this. Again, move it around and try to incorporate this in your lead playing. Okay, now if you noticed, so far the 2 ideas I gave you, we were pivoting off of one note. Now I'd like to talk about pivoting off of more than one note, a group of notes here. And I'm going to give you an example where I'm pivoting off of G, E, and G here. And I'll play the lick fast and again slow it down. Okay, this is one of my favorite. Here it is slowed down. You notice I'm pivoting off of G, E, and G. So I'm going like this. Whoops. Okay, learn this, and then again, move it around to different positions, and get the most out of it that you can. Okay, so far, every example I've given you, if you notice, the notes that followed the pivot note were always underneath. They were always lower in pitch than the pivot note. Now I want to give you some ideas here where it's the other way around. The notes are higher than the note you're pivoting off of. So I'm going to pivot off of this E note here on the B string, and the notes are going to be higher than that. And the line's going to be this. Okay, now I'll slow this down so you can see exactly how I'm doing it. It goes like this. Okay, this is a really neat lick here. I use this on one of my songs on the Mind's Eye album called Life Force, and I'll play that for you just to give you an example of how you can, maybe use this stuff in your solos, and then I'll again slow it down to show you exactly what I'm doing. Okay. All right, now this is in the key of B minor. And the line is played like this. I'm going to do it real slow so you can see what I'm doing. Okay, here we go. That's just an example of, how you might apply this to your playing, This stuff is used a lot in classical music, a lot by classical violinists. That's where I was kind of influenced to do this stuff. And, it's a really cool idea. You should experiment, with all this pivoting examples here and try to incorporate this in your playing. It's a new direction, and I think you'd find it pretty cool. Okay, my second lick here in this segment is going to be this. Okay, now here it is slowed down. If you notice, I'm pivoting off of A, G, A. Okay, now my last example is this idea. Here it is slow, pivoting off of B, C, and E. There you go, there's another idea. Okay, also, you can use this pivoting stuff, maybe if you're into hammer-ons with your right hand on the neck, you can incorporate this in this way. So I have an example here for that. And again, I'm going to be pivoting off this E note here on the 12th fret, and the lick is going to go like this. Okay, here it is slowed down. If you notice, every other note is just this E here, and I'm just going like this. right, so there's one more, example of how you can use this. So, again, learn these licks and experiment with them. Try to squeeze every, possible lick you can off of each one of these ideas. And, again, sit down with a tape recorder with some rhythm tracks and just experiment with these ideas over chords. I'm sure you'll enjoy coming up with some cool stuff. Okay. Now, the next section I want to get into is a section on arpeggios. Okay, let's first talk about what an arpeggio is. Okay, we're going to work in the key of D major here, and let's talk about a D major chord. Actually, what a D major chord is, it's built from a D major scale, and how you build this is you take the first, third, and fifth tones from D major, scale. So if you play the scale, D's the first note, F sharp's the third, and A is the fifth. So there you have a 1, 3, 5, a triad here based on a D major scale. So that makes a D major chord. Now what we want to do here is add a D and a higher octave right here, and the F sharp and a higher octave again, just to make the chord sound more full, more tones in the chord here. That's basically where you build a chord. Now what an arpeggio is it's a line, played from a chord. So you want to play a chord as a single note line and not let the notes ring together as in a chord, but just use it as a line, such as this. Now all I'm doing there is playing first, third, and fifth in one octave, and then the first, third, and fifth again in the second octave. And then I'm coming back, down the arpeggio scale. So now the next thing you want to do here, once you learn this position, is you want to build an arpeggio off of every chord in the key of D major. So let's first look at the chords that are in key in D major. You'll notice that D major, E minor, F sharp minor, G major, A major, B minor, C sharp minor with a flat 5, and D, the octave again. There you have a chord scale. So now, if you're not, too sure about how to do this, take a piece of paper and just write these chords out that I just gave you, the correct chords, and then all you need to do is find the first tone, the third tone, and the fifth tone of each chord, and you can build an arpeggio, like that off of each chord. So you'll need to do that in every position, and it's going to sound like this. All right, so there you have an arpeggio off of each chord in the key of D major. Now, another real popular thing nowadays is, if you notice, I played these arpeggios with down, up strokes. There's another popular way to do it, which is called sweeping. Instead of picking every note down, up, individually, you're going to just sweep through the chord pattern with a downstroke on the way, down, and then an upstroke, and you're going to hit all the notes in the chord, with one stroke, like this. So if you noticed, I hit all the notes on the way down with one stroke, and then a stroke, all the notes with a stroke on the way up. Like that. And this is a real popular thing nowadays. A lot of guys are doing this. If you experiment with this and, try to work on it, you may find that it's real hard to articulate the notes. The notes may start ringing together as a chord, which is what you don't want to happen. You want to play this as a single note line, not a chord. You don't want any two notes to ring together. So, there's two ways to really practice the articulation here, making the notes sound, even and articulate, so you can hear each note as a line. And, one way would be just to mute the strings with the palm of your hand to kind of stop the notes and not let them ring out for too long. I do this. Kind of like this. So work on that. You'll find that by muting, you stop the notes so they don't ring together, and this makes every note more distinct and sound as more of a line rather than a chord. Okay, another way to do this is just to try to lift your fingers off the string as fast as possible. Instead of holding it down as a chord, like that, just try to pick your fingers up right away. And, that's the second way. So work on that. This is a really neat idea. Play it in that first position and, try it in every position and really work on every arpeggio in the entire scale and try to incorporate this in your playing. All right, now I have an idea here, a little exercise I put together with arpeggios. And what this actually is I'm building a 3-note or a triplet pattern on each note of the arpeggio. So we get this type of figure. Okay, now I'll slow that down so you get what I'm doing here. I'm building 3 notes off of D, 3 notes off of F sharp, 3 notes off of A, and so on up the scale. Now, once you've learned this, you want to do this again in every position. All right, that's one exercise that you can work on. Again, the arpeggios, I moved it all the way up the neck in every position. It's again the same thing, the same chords in the D major scale that we talked about earlier. So you're just going to move this pattern to every position again and work on that idea. All right, now my next example here is based on the same idea. Okay, what we did, with this idea is we ascended in one position, and then we descend it in the same position. Okay, my next idea is to ascend in one position and then move up to the next, arpeggio and descend in that position. So you get this idea. All right, so there's one idea, and my next idea is just the opposite of that: to descend in one position and then ascend in the next, like this. Okay, now there's that idea, and again, you want to take it from there and move it all the way back. Okay, that's another thing that you can incorporate into your playing. You should work on these arpeggios, and the way for teaching purposes, I've put together examples here, and they're in a very clinical fashion. So learn how to play them by these examples. But then when you go to apply them in your solos, don't play them straight through. Like very clinical, like the examples. Try to just use them as a vehicle, a tool to express yourself. Just as a scale. When you play a scale, when you're improvising, you don't play a scale straight through. You just use the scale as a tool to play, a solo, to express yourself. You're just going to, take various ideas from the scale. You're not going to play it all the way through and then all the way back through. So do the same thing, once you learn the arpeggios. Just try to incorporate, different parts of those different bits into your playing. Okay, now I have an example of how I use, some of these arpeggio ideas. And this is from a song off my record called Hero Without Honor. And what I did is I took a chord progression. It's a classical chord progression here. Bach used it a lot, and Mozart. It's kind of a common classical idea that's really cool. and the chord progression is it's in the key of E minor, and the chord progression goes like this: E minor, A minor, D major, G major, C major, F sharp or F sharp diminished, and then B major. A little out of tune, but okay. Now, if you notice with this B major, it's exactly like the example that I gave you at the beginning of the video for using the sharp 7 scale. B minor is actually in the key of E minor, but I substituted B major here. I made D sharp, which is the sharp 7th here in the key of E minor, and so that would allow me to play a sharp 7th in the line I played over that chord. Okay, so now I'm going to analyze how I structured arpeggios over the chords. The first chord was E minor, and what I did is I took a high arpeggio here, starting with this note here, and I built it like this. You know, right off the E minor chord. And then the next chord is A, so I built an A minor arpeggio here that went like this. And if you notice, that ends with A. And then the next chord is D, so I built this arpeggio over it. G is the next chord, so I'll build a G arpeggio. Next chord is C. I'll build another arpeggio off of that. Now we have the F sharp, which is actually F sharp diminished, but I'm just playing the root note here and letting the keyboards play the diminished chord. And so the arpeggio over that is this. Ends right on the F sharp. And then over the B, I just played a line. Okay, so now I'll give you speed it up and give you an idea of how it goes. First of all, the chords are played kind of like this. Okay, now the arpeggio actually goes like this. Whoops. All right, so there's an example, you know, how I structure some arpeggios over chords in one of my songs. Again, you know, learn these ideas and, you know, experiment with it and try to come up with some cool ideas, you know, and hopefully you'll come up with all kinds of cool stuff, and then when your record comes out, I can learn some of your ideas and incorporate that in my stuff. Okay, I want to move on now to some picking exercises. You know, I often get questions about how I developed my picking, how I developed, you know, articulation and speed and stuff like that. And, you know, how I did do that was by doing exercises, you know. And what I actually did was I took some basic exercises that I was taught, you know, that probably most of you have seen, and I added some of my own ideas to these exercises. And I kind of clumped them together into like a 30-minute workout is what I call it. And I used to run through this every day. And the philosophy here is, you know, that you're playing 30 minutes straight, picking down, and up, consistently, you know, so you're really working your arm. And it's really boring, you know, it's really boring to do this, but it's so beneficial, you know, I can't stress how important this is. You know, me, myself, I did this every day because I thought it was worth it, and, you know, it really did help my picking. So if you can stand the boredom, you know, it would be real beneficial to do this stuff. Okay. Now, you've probably seen a lot of these exercises. They're the basic chromatic type of, you know, things here. And also I have some of my own things that I added to these. And with a normal picking exercise, though, you're normally taught, you know, an exercise, and you play it through for 1 week, you know, if you're taking lessons, and then you go back for another lesson and you learn another one, you play that one for the next week. Well, that doesn't really help you too much because you're playing the exercise through and it doesn't really take that long. So you're not really working your arm enough that way. So I think you need to take all the exercises, you know, that you can think of and you know, pile them up and really work on doing them for, you know, like 30 minutes in this case is what I did. So I'd like to begin with the exercises here. And this might get confusing at times, so, you know, I'd recommend even getting out a piece of paper and a pen, and you can write some of this down if you want. Okay, the first exercise here, okay, I like to start with what I call 6-string exercises. You may have seen these before. This is what I call a 1, 2, 3, 4 exercise, and I'm just playing chromatic notes here, starting on the first string on F, and I'm playing F, F sharp, G, and G sharp like this. I'm starting with a downstroke, and I'm playing down, up, down, up. Okay, and then the exercise continues doing that same pattern on every string, and it's played through like this. Okay, now, there's nothing musical about this, you know, it's definitely a technical, physical exercise workout, so, you know, that's why it's so boring, but again, you know, I'd recommend doing this. Okay, so now when you've completed that, you've completed the pattern in one position. Now what you want to do is move this up in half steps and do it in every position on the neck until your first finger is up to the 12th fret. Now I'll give you an example here of what I mean. Okay, I'm going to stop there because you get the idea here. You're going to keep moving it up, though, in half steps like I just did, all the way to the 12th fret. And then when you're finished in that position, you can stretch your arm if you want, take a 2-second breather, and then you're going to start the whole thing from there and come all the way back down again in half steps like this. Okay, you get the idea, you know, all the way back down to the first fret, and then you've completed exercise number 1, which was what I call 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay, boring yet? Okay, this is just the beginning, so hold on. All right, the next exercise is exactly that, you know, example backwards. Instead of playing 1, 2, 3, 4, you're going to play 4, 3, 2, 1 like this. Okay, and same idea all over again. Go through the whole schmeal again with this 4, 3, 2, 1 pattern. You want to move it up in half steps again to the 12th fret. You can take a little breather and then come all the way back in half steps again with the same pattern. Okay, now, you know, each one of these patterns is going to probably take, you know, maybe 2 minutes, maybe more. That's just an estimate. So don't get discouraged if it takes a long time because, you know, it's going to take a long time. You know, that's what it's all about. And also don't wimp out here and skip things like I am. You know, I'm just doing that to save time here. Okay, the third exercise is what I call a 1, 2, 3 exercise, and it would be played like this. Okay, now that's the same idea here. You want to keep moving this pattern all the way up to the 12th fret, and in half steps, and then all the way back down in half steps. Okay, now our next idea is, you guessed it, that backwards, 3, 2, 1. Okay, now the unique thing about these 3-note exercises is that you have an odd number here. Okay, now with the 4-note pattern, let's take that for example. You played 4 notes on a string, so it was always even. You played down, up, and you always started the next string on a downstroke. Now with 3 notes on a string, it doesn't work out that way. You're going to play down on a string, and then the next string you're going to play up, down, up. The thing you want to avoid doing here is playing down, and then starting the next string on a downstroke again and playing down, on every string. You don't want to do that, because that defeats the whole purpose of here of using consistently, back and forth strokes with your arm. So you want to play down, then start the next string on an upstroke, up, start the next string on a downstroke, down, and you'll find that you're going to start every other string on an upstroke, every other string on a downstroke. So don't cheat and play 2 downstrokes in a row. Keep real conscious of playing back and forth with your picking. All right, now that completes the 6-string exercises. Let's move on to what I call 2-string exercises. Basically the same ideas, but concentrated over an area here of just 2 strings. In other words, for every position that your wrist or your arm is over, whatever you pick with, if you're playing over this string, you're in one position. If you're playing here, you're in another position. You're going to use slightly different muscles or use your muscle in a slightly different way. So I've signaled out playing in a certain area to work specifically on that part of the muscle or that way you're using the muscle. So I've taken the same exercises and applied them like this. The 1, 2, 3, 4 idea like this. 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, and then you're just going to move it up like this. Okay, now you completed one cycle of the exercise. Now you want to move that same thing to the next 2 strings, the A and the D. Go through the whole thing going up in half steps all the way back. And then you want to move to the next 2 strings, D and G. Do the same thing. All the way up in half steps all the way back. Okay, move to the next 2 strings, same thing. Next 2 strings, B and E, same thing. And then you want to come back. Use these 2 strings here, the G and the B, and do the same thing. Use the D and the G, do the same thing, all the way up, all the way back. Next 2 strings, and then finally the last 2 strings, you're back to where you started. Now don't cheat on this, make sure you play everything here. Just because I'm skipping, you shouldn't. Okay, now the next idea is that same thing but backwards. Instead of 1, 2, 3, 4, 4, 3, 2, 1. Again, you're going to complete the whole sequence again, which I just showed you using it backwards. So that's part 2. That's the 4, 3, 2, 1. Okay, now you're going to use 3-note pattern. It's going to be 1, 2, 3, and you're going to do the same thing. All the way up to the 12th fret and all the way back in half steps. And you're going to do that on each set of 2 strings, all the way down the strings and all the way up the strings. Okay, and then the last exercise of this section is that backwards, 3, 2, 1. And again, you want to go through the whole same process. And don't let this get confusing, because it's really basic, it's simple. If you have any trouble, just rewind the tape and check it out again, or also what I recommended before, write this down on paper. Okay, now the next thing is a 1-string exercise. This is for articulation on 1 string. I've seen a lot of guys just play fast on 1 string where they just get the pick going back and forth like this. And they kind of lose the articulation. Their left hand is not in sync with their right hand, so they're not hitting a note with their left hand as they are with their right hand. Exactly, the timing's off. They're not in sync. So this next exercise is this. 1, 2, 3, 4, 4, 3, 2, 1. You keep moving the pattern up, and it goes like this. Now you want to do that same thing on every string. You know, you want to do it on the B string and then the G string, move to every string, and then come all the way back down again until you're back where you started. And that would conclude the one string exercise. Okay, the final section of this exercise here is to take the exercises, the scale exercises based on a major scale that I gave you at the beginning here, seconds, thirds, and the X, what I call the X, and starting them in the lowest position on the neck, and then moving them up in half steps all the way to the first fingers on the 12th fret, and then all the way back in half steps. For instance, you take the third scale. Okay, that would conclude the final segment here of the picking exercises. So try to do this, you know, every day as much as, or every other day as much as you can, and I guarantee you'll find this real beneficial. Even though it's really boring, it's going to definitely help your picking, you know, greatly. So, you know, I did this every day, and other players that pick great, like Steve Morse, I read where he also did the same thing. And what better example could I give? Because that guy's just one of the greatest pickers around. So, you know, try to incorporate this into your practice routine, and it'll greatly help you. All right, that pretty much concludes the video here. Thanks for tuning in. I hope you've, you know, gotten, you know, a lot of things out of this that you can apply to your playing. And, you know, I hope you can use this stuff as a vehicle to come up with some of your own ideas and, you know, incorporate this in your lead playing, your improvisation. Thanks a lot, and see you around.
Thank you.